Kicking it off. Welcome everyone to the first of the year OpenShift Commons Validated Pattern Special Interest Group meeting. It's just a lot to say all at once. We have an interesting agenda today to talk through the more of a follow-up from last call. Martin Jackson's on the call to discuss any questions or just to review the secrets inside GitOps. Afterwards, we do have the ML Ops credit card fraud detection use case. We have a video to kind of go through. If you'd like to see it, we could talk about the use case, where you can find more information, what we're looking to do on that, and just an overall discussion. In the future, if there are topics you'd like to go over, you want to discuss, you want to lead, let us know. And happy to put you on the agenda, something to talk about in the future. Or if there's a different group or different team, someone else outside of this that it has a use case and architecture, some method to deploy or configure, we're open to discussing any of that. So just trying to be very transparent. This is a community event, so whatever we want to talk about, we're going to let the communities decide. And with that, I'll hand it over to Marty. Was there something else that we wanted to dig into, Marty, or is that just going through some of the questions or some aspects of your presentation the last time that we want to highlight? What do you think, just to get kicked?
Yeah, if anybody has any lingering questions, or just kind of wants a status update for kind of where the work is that was that I alluded to on the call last time, feel free to ask. I think let me post a link to the pull request for the secrets handling. So this is where the new development is for adding the extra backends feature to the common subtree for the validated patterns framework. It has not been merged yet. We're in the process of reviewing it as a team. Based on our team priorities, it seems very likely that I'll be able to add a feature to be able to make even our Vault support use the new intermediate data structure that we developed for this purpose. So I would definitely expect that this work will be merged by the end of this month, very likely sooner. But that's kind of where that is. Does anybody have any specific questions or anything they want to discuss further about the secret stuff we talked about last time? Going once.
It has been a few weeks and a couple of holidays. So.
It has. As a famous Spaniard once said, there's too much to explain. Let me sum up. You don't want to put your secrets explicitly in Git. We value GitOps highly. We want to record the desired state of our deployments, but when recording that desired state would put us in a position of revealing login secrets or other sensitive material, we need to take a slightly different approach. And the approach that the validated patterns framework and team prefers and takes is to effectively tokenize those secrets and use an external secrets vault handler in order to maintain those secrets in a reasonably versioned way, and then use the integrations that exist within the wider Kubernetes world to help make use of those in conjunction with GitOps. That is not that is a fairly widely practiced scheme for handling secrets in GitOps. It's not wildly controversial or edgy, as the kids say. to kind of do that. But we've got our reasons for doing that, and we're also campaigning for wider support of this exact approach more broadly within Red Hat engineering.
Thanks, Marty. That was great. Kind of following up, just making sure, were there any questions on how we do things or around specifically the introduction of secrets into GitOps? Or I know the last session we went through quite a bit of materials, and there's trying to see, I think that we had the recording. We may need to export the presentation so that everyone can take a look at it again and include it in the notes. But I'll follow up with you afterwards, Marty, to kind of do that.
Sure.
I don't have any questions myself. I know that we're looking at enabling secrets through external secrets operator. There are different approaches we could take kind of longer term. There's also an SSCSI driver that is being considered inside Red Hat, but I know our approach of the ESO is the one that we'd like to focus on. Just summing up my limited knowledge of your topic because it's very complicated and complex.
Yes, those statements are all correct, and I agree with all of them.
I appreciate the acknowledgement and acceptance into the note. There was some things we were looking at longer term with secrets, but I don't know that there's anything pressing that we need to share today. Your pull request will at least give folks an understanding of what we're trying to do, and that they can make comments on or at least provide their input if they'd like to.
Sure. Definitely. Yeah, the pull request in its current form will enable two major things within the framework. The first is using a separate Kubernetes namespace with Kubernetes objects, secret objects, as a backing store for projecting other secrets into Kubernetes. This is beneficial because it breaks the hard dependency that we have on Vault as the secret store. The feature branch also provides the capability of bypassing ESO directly and allows you to directly inject your secrets into your deployment without having to worry about anything like ESO or SSCSI, because if you're going to be injecting secrets into Kubernetes, the question is, what's the value add from injecting your secrets into a separate namespace only to have them transformed into whatever namespace you want them in. So since the capability basically exists within the framework to do that, we figured it would be nice for people to have a code path to just directly inject their secrets if they wanted, and if they had any restrictions in their environment against installing either ESO or Vault, that they could just bypass all of that stuff completely and just use the directly manage their secrets outside of GitOps, which is another approach that is sometimes taken with these kinds of deployments.
So with this, if you're going to get started, as you mentioned, I think on the last call, you do want to have your secrets methodology in place. If you're going to start with an external secrets, or if you're going to start with a Vault, you should start with that Vault and then build around it. If you don't have the budget to start with Vault, you can go through with this option and just place the secrets into the namespace and work from there.
Definitely.
But you should understand what your company's direction is as far as this sort of thing, and then follow that. It's hard to retrofit afterwards. It's a lot more work to do it later. So getting started with the way you're going to do it is a better approach.
Yep.
Okay.
There was a lot more work than I expected in retrofitting the code to adjust it to account for the possibility that Vault would not be the back end. There are stories, but that's just the way these kinds of software development things go. All software is built with certain assumptions in mind, and you have a particular thing that needs to be done right now. You need to do that thing. David, question. I see your hand up in the in the icons.
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry, it's I'm on my
Yes.
phone and it's hard to switch off, back and forth. Stop smiling
Yep.
there, Anthony. Two questions.
He does that all the time. It's all right.
I know. Guy Smiley, right? See what happens when you come on camera there, Mr. Here Per. You were saying about the different ways of doing secrets. And I'm thinking from a small company standpoint, looking at the small with internal slash less money aspect, and then move as it grows, as the money, proof of concept, et cetera, works out, and then you look at it and say, hey, we can, offload internal secrets to maybe the vault standpoint versus going to just directly to vault and then maybe having to work your way back into the newer or the internal type thing, if that makes sense.
Sure, it does.
Especially if you're trying to have a small company looking at doing OpenShift or something of that nature, and going from that, and that may be something across the board, looking at it from an internal standpoint because you want all your eggs in one basket, or you may not have the money or fundage to do all the cute bells and whistles, if you will.
Right.
I mean,
absolutely. Secrets management is a tricky business to be in because by defining a central secret store, you paint the biggest target on that thing that you possibly can from a security standpoint.
Exactly.
You can't hide it. And anybody who sees any of the internal configurations of your systems will immediately recognize, oh, this is where all the goody stuff is kept. So it's something that you have to take extraordinary care with, and you have to make sure that all of the secrets are encrypted both in flight and at rest, and that you do everything that you possibly can to protect those secrets, because compromise of the secret store is potentially a devastating thing, for all the security reasons. And for that purpose, it's an organizational decision whether you're ready to, whether the cost is worth it for your organization to invest in such a secret store. The secrets have been managed for many years, and you can do a lot with secrets without having to have a dedicated store to store them in, especially if cost is a primary concern for you. And additionally, the operational complexity of managing a secret store is significant. And so, training might be an issue for you to have people, actually understand how to properly set up and manage one of these secret stores. Because there are disaster recovery implications for what you do with secrets data, how you back up and recover them. The open source Vault product, for example, has a lot of safeguards against potential compromise by people yanking the disks out of the drive and decrypting them. And there are lots of things like that you have to worry about. And the more regulatory consideration you have to worry about, the more the more those kinds of things come into play. And of course, that's a really big step to take if that's your first foray into secrets management. It's like the first step is 8 feet tall, and the rest of the staircases, got the standard, 6-inch steps or whatever. But the first step is a doozy. This is one of the reasons that the current engineering work that I'm doing here is structured the way it is, to not force you to have to, get all the way into that if that's what you want to do for patterns. not requiring something that is external to Kubernetes, or just being able to use the Kubernetes objects directly. My personal advice, kind of in my background, I'm used to having a fairly high functioning group of engineers around me. What I would do if it were my decision to make would be to go after the an open source version of one of these secrets vaults, and the HashiCorp is very good, but my background is very different in that regard, and I'm used to having. I come from, before I worked at Red Hat, I worked in an organization that was very used to kind of owning its own destiny and doing high-level stewardship of this kind of tooling. So, I potentially have a comfort level with that might not be universal. Failing that, if that isn't the right option, then the crawl, walk, run strategy, having a separate vault is definitely the run part of the crawl, walk, run strategy. So the crawl part of it would probably be managing secret objects directly using a process that is outside of GitOps. While that may not be ideal, it is also the most simple and straightforward, and doesn't require external dependencies or external considerations. The next step up there, the walk step, would be to use the Kubernetes, potentially to use the Kubernetes backend and ESO as a mechanism to kind of get used to what secrets brokering looks like and get the, what we would consider more of the proper GitOps experience, so that all of your, the state, you'd satisfy the we're managing all of our state with GitOps kinds of requirements for participating in GitOps. So that wound up being a little bit long-winded, but I hope that answers the question that you wanted me to answer.
It does. It just it was more of making sure that we cover all the different levels of setups, I guess you call it.
Yeah. Sure.
From the because if you're like a one man shop up to having multiple different people, multiple engineers, your GitOps, the whole gambit, if you will,
Yep.
of people and or capabilities, if that makes sense. And so
Yes.
you kind of have to do, and that maybe not necessarily be a validated patterns thing, but it's in general, not a one one little piece, but OpenShift is in general. People say, oh well, it's geared towards this or geared towards that. Not necessarily. And so that's from my end, I have to kind of, I don't say preach, but more kind of remind people that OpenShift isn't just for bigger organizations, bigger companies, that type of thing. It's runs the gambit of multiple layers, multiple groups, multiple everything else.
Yep.
And so that type of thing you're looking at going, hey, this actually works. And I guess Mr. Branch has a question. I guess I'll be quiet now and let him ask his.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that same discussion, I was thinking, the goal is to get to where you can do a rollback with the GitOps, because if you have to recover, you need that speed. But is there something, a picture, Martin, you can paint to management that says, hey, you get the speed in your recovery and your disaster recovery, but but without this, you could take a while to get you back up in case the worst thing happens.
Yeah, you're in the way in previous kinds of discussions, where this sort of thing came up. One analogy that's been kind of helpful in describing the situation is, asking the question, how many steering wheels do you want to have in your car? And usually the answer to that question is one. Because if you can control the state of your deployment in lots of different ways, you're basically every different mechanism that you have that influences what your operational deployment state is in your final deployment can be looked at as a steering wheel, right? I'm going to use tool X to set this up, and I'm going to use tool Y to set this up. Well, frequently tool X and tool Y don't talk to each other and don't understand, like the limits of what tool X can do, the limits of what tool Y can do, what's in scope for tool X, what's in scope for tool Y. And this is, this is one of the reasons that we like GitOps architecturally. GitOps is the way of saying, okay, GitOps is the single steering wheel that determines how this setup is going to work. And everything, we know that there isn't anything that's out of scope of this deployment that's managed by something else, because GitOps is the only thing that, GitOps is the amalgamation of the tooling and the setup that is going to be controlling how this deployment is done. And we don't have to worry about, manual fix-ups or manual patching or injecting just a little bit from tool Y. Now, it is definitely possible to include other tooling inside a GitOps framework. And the validated patterns framework does do that. It's not like Argo CD is, the only thing that is relevant, but all of the state that is managed through Argo CD is where we store our desired state, but we use the other tooling within Kubernetes and other systems, as we talk about Ansible-based validated patterns too, where we don't have Argo CD in an Ansible-based validated pattern. Ansible automation platform would be the broker here. But we can use those tools, to express state that we want. Using various things. Within the validated patterns framework, we have Ansible jobs that run inside Kubernetes as cron jobs and other things. So it's fine to, to make your own life easier, but it's really important to have that single point of responsibility in order to, to understand what the state of the pattern is, so that you don't have, or the state of the deployment is, so that you don't have to rely on external tribal knowledge in order to complete the deployment or to miss something. Because there's nothing worse than, when you're in a DR, turning around and saying, I thought you had the passwords. Where are the passwords? How do the passwords get there? By fully embracing GitOps, you can answer those questions.
That being said, Martin, if you did have, or you are using an external vault, you would have to back up and restore that in addition to your OpenShift workloads and the definitions and depending on how you want to do it, you could restore it at a secondary site. I mean, that's your DR strategy, as you were mentioning. But the vault
Sure.
is a separate point that you should be considering as far as your backup and recovery. Or
Absolutely.
If you're looking at trying to make sure that hackers don't steal the data or encrypt it or go that route, you have to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah, in the GitOps framework, and the way that the validated patterns framework uses GitOps and the vault, we would have the vault would be another entity that would have to be considered as something that's in scope for DR, but the vault itself isn't driving or making deployment decisions about which secrets go where or other things. The vault is acted upon by other entities that are being managed through GitOps. So the single steering wheel concept has been very helpful for me in conversations with management about how are we thinking about this? How should we make it work?
Does that answer the question, Benjamin? I know you're
Yes,
diligently
that's
taking
excellent.
notes, so I don't want to interrupt that, but just wanted to validate.
Oh, yes, that helps. I'm trying to, but I think, when management gets hit, they are like to point fingers, and everybody has to have something that explain what they were doing, and
Yep.
you can say, hey, you know, so I like the single steering wheel.
I have a quick question.
Yeah,
Is,
sure, Karina.
do you have that captured in, so if you're looking at the validated pattern, do you have those DR and backup aspects captured within the pattern itself? Because that's a huge thing, right? Reminding people to back up their external secret store. It seems like a no-brainer, but I just wanted to make sure that that's captured as well.
The patterns framework itself doesn't model all of the DR scenarios. There's a bit of tension in some ways in terms of, how do we make a pattern something that is convenient and accessible to run, and how much do we make it look like, a full-blown, professional deployment? And in a larger environment, I would expect that the vault would be an external entity that would have kind of its own cluster or its own bastion that it's running inside. And then clusters that are using secrets from that would be connected to that through, through the normal secure mechanisms. There are a bunch of ways to set clients up securely, through tokenization and everything. Within the validated patterns framework, we run the vault inside the cluster that the pattern is running on. Not because we think that's a best practice from an operational standpoint, but because if every pattern required at least 2 clusters to run it, it would be really, really difficult for a lot of people to to be able to make use of patterns at all. And we also, one of the things that we strive for within the patterns framework is to make each pattern independent and independently testable. And that also, if we were to separate things in that way, as you would expect to see in a full-blown production deployment, that would also have implications on how much infrastructure it takes us to test and so forth.
That makes sense. We talked about it before in some of the other calls that one, want to make sure people don't get confused on what's maybe supported or not. And then, so I was wondering that makes sense what you're saying, but I wonder just within the pattern or within the notes calling out, so for this piece, remember to do this, or this piece, just reminders that one, if it's external, where do you get your support? Two, remember to back it up because otherwise you're in trouble. Just kind of architectural best practices.
Yeah, I know that in the internal tooling, particularly in the pieces of the patterns that do the setup for Vault itself, there are some notes like that. Michaela and I worked on doing those things. Michaela is remarkably diligent about saying that this is something that we would never expect to be done in production. And these are kind of the boundaries of where support begins and ends. But without potentially having the background of an engineer who's worked on these things, some of those things may not be completely clear if it's your first experience with some of these things. We do definitely try to discuss the support issues and make it clear what is and isn't supported, at least by Red Hat, in the top level documentation for the patterns, for the individual patterns and for the framework itself.
to your point, Karina, we may put together some knowledge-based articles. We have been working with the developer.redhat.com folks to include individual topics. What do you do with Helm? How do you deal with GitOps, secrets management? These are all topics that we have on redhat.com and developers.redhat.com. But for those specific concepts, I did write it down, and we'll see if maybe it makes sense to put a small blog together to illustrate what customers and partners should be looking at when considering patterns for support, for expanding out a service that you want to include initially as a 1 node to a 3 node or something to that effect, or maybe even HADR considerations. But these are great bits of information to know where folks are looking for information. So we appreciate them being called out specifically. And I see David has his hand up, so I'll toss it over to him.
No, I'm just gonna ask the question, could that be a part of the pattern, where let's say you're using a pattern to set something up, for example, GitOps or whatever, to set the GitOps up, and in the app, and then in the process of that pattern, have a way to do a cursory backup of the secrets, of the secrets vault, not necessarily, excuse me, not necessarily, using HashiCorp or anything like that, but have something internally so that you're, it's part of the process of setting that up so that it's because security is going to be inherent either way you slice it, whether it be external vault or an internal vault to do your secrets, so that when you do a disaster recovery, at least you have something in place. So if everything dies, you have, the pattern plus your secrets, plus whatever else, maybe, GitHub or whatever, so that you can at least start the process of recovering everything versus having nothing and you're basically back to square one with your development, with your, your recovery, with everything, from a disaster standpoint. Does that make sense, folks, or is that just something that's completely out of the realm of patterns, validated patterns? Because it's like, patterns, I'm assuming we use patterns to, set everything up. Why not use the secret, vault setup and recovery, backup and recovery in the same vein, versus sitting there going, well, we have to have something different. And that's, something different that we have to do later versus having it all at one time. Does that kind of help?
Yeah.
Does that understand, Karina, what you're trying to go with on your question or comment?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, David. Well, along similar lines. See, Ben has his hand up now.
Yes. I guess I'm still thinking about COVID, and I'm thinking about RBAC and internal and external secrets. Should the whole team have? I'm trying to figure out, how do I put, does RBAC control my internal and external secrets, and what happens if that one person gets sick that day and can't come in? Can he do it from home, or does he have to be in to do it, or I'm thinking of a COVID and a man down situation.
Yep. Oh, these are all reasons why having secrets vaulting is something that can help an organization operationally, because in a situation, if you're using a secrets vault and you're using tokens in your GitOps deployments to represent those secrets, then almost nobody has to see the actual secrets in question. You don't have to worry quite as much about single person access and who's got the database password. What is the database password? You can with a vaulting kind of product, you can store that password securely, and then most of those products have RBAC on them that will prevent people, unauthorized people, as well as unauthorized systems from gaining access to to see those sensitive credentials. And you also have the ability for typically HashiCorp does to version control those secrets. So you know exactly which field within that secret, if the secret contains a username and a password, the password changes at such and such a time. You can change the password, you can rewind and look at what a previous password was, reestablish that, make that the current one. There are all kinds of version control kinds of things that you can do if you have a vaulting system. Those kinds of things you have to do in other ways if you are managing secrets the post-it note pasted to your monitor way. I actually prefer to put them on post-it notes under my keyboard, a little bit more secure that way, because you have to flip the keyboard over the other way. But if there is one physical copy of the secret and only one person knows where the physical copy of that secret is, then you're going to be in that. Oh no, it's totally recorded. I'm joking. If you don't have, there is a significant operational and sort of process related tax that you have to pay to manage those kinds of secrets. And if you only have one person in your organization, to go back to something that David said earlier in the call, if you only have one person in the organization who's responsible for secrets, then it's pretty easy. Once you have two people in your organization who are potentially responsible for secrets, it starts getting more complicated. If you have entire teams of people, then it clearly makes sense to at least think about doing things the more process heavy way. But one way or the other, once you start growing the number of people within your organization who are responsible for doing these things, ultimately, your CIO or director or whoever is shouting into the other end of the phone, why isn't my application up? Doesn't want to hear, well, the Post-it notes that that have the secrets are stuck on somebody else's monitor, and he has COVID right now and is in ICU. That isn't the most career enhancing way to answer that question in my experience. So there's an awful lot of real world sort of process and implication that how these secrets handling how it works out in the real world could influence you and your organization. And I can't give advice to every organization, and I can't pretend to know what everybody's circumstances are. But as these things grow, some of the process problems related to how do you transfer secrets, how do you make sure that there are multiple people who can get at them, but you can't, not everybody can have everything. All of those problems need to be solved either through process or through technology.
Awesome. I see. I just wanted to make sure, Benjamin. Yeah, okay. Your hand is still up. Do you have?
Yeah, I got one more. So
yeah.
I think you just answered my question, and I was thinking, like, if you have a team that rotates on calls, or especially for the weekends, then that vault manager would have to rotate to that person that's in charge. If you ran your business that way, is I think what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I don't want to cut the conversation off because I think this has been fantastic. Going this long on this topic, I didn't actually anticipate this, but that's okay. Rather than covering the credit card use case, it might be better. I did toss two things into the notes. So if you go to the notes doc that Karina had pasted earlier into the chat here, you can see at the top of it has a video and the pattern around it. So what I'd like to do is have a discussion on this, and I think it's going to take more than a couple minutes. So rather than wasting everyone's time and just go through and presenting that video, I'll ask that, and I'll send this out to the Slack as well, if you're going to be on the call next week and you're interested in discussing that you watch the video yourself. And yes, I'm sorry, this isn't strictly homework, but it's a partial take-home exam. You get to do the work on your own, or if you come in fresh and don't watch anything, then we'll discuss what was on the video anyway. David, you have your hand up.
So you want a research paper, a book report, or something like that with this, or is it just read the watch the video, etc.
That's all I was looking for, is just to watch the video. But you're welcome to toss it into ChatGPT and ask it for a summary, and then send that to the class. I mean, that's acceptable. That's an A right there.
If ChatGPT gets it right.
There's an assumption there, yes. The use case itself is just around using MLOps for credit card detection in financial services. This can be applied to any number of use cases or any number of verticals. It is a kind of the foundation for of what we do inside the patterns. We have some set of actions that we're looking to get output based on. We have input going into that. Some processing takes place, and then there's output. And Arslan in this did a great job in presenting, but also did a tremendous amount of work to put this use case together. I would love to have him on the call to discuss it with you, but he's in APAC, I think Singapore. So when we get started here, it would be about midnight his time. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to get a little closer to his time zone on one of our calls, but I would be surprised if that works out the way it is. So rather than spending the next 15 minutes just talking through things, I'll end the call today a little early. And in 2 weeks, we can, like we did with Marty here, pepper him with questions and thoughts and expectations based on the homework, the reading assignments, and your individual expectations. With that, we can close it, unless there is any final comments, concerns, questions. Nothing. Okay.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you, Marty and Anthony.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Happy New Year.